but it shouldn't. I've done it enough, but it still takes me a minute to figure it
That's
out.
fine. You look beautiful.
As do you always. Hello, everyone. Sandra and I are going to talk about trauma. Let's what it does, how it affects us.
Trauma Rama.
Um, a traumathon. I had a doctor. It's actually the surgeon that not the one that transplanted me, but the one that made it happen. We were at a reception for him because he was leaving, and he said, "Where do you get your sense of humor from, Sherry?" I said, "Oh, childhood trauma." I mean, it's the truth. So he just looked at me all funny and laughed and walked away. But I mean, it is what it is.
It
So
is.
a lot of people that I know personally, actually, who are funny and a little bit outgoing and quirky, right? Um, I find that a lot of, and I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of them have a lot of childhood trauma. And a lot of people switch that into humor. A lot of professional comedians use their trauma in their jokes, and we use our trauma to teach from, right? And but but a lot of us don't realize that there's so much that goes on in our lives, and sometimes it comes in clusters. So
Right.
sometimes there are some trauma that's overlooked because there's so many clusters of it. And then we realize years later that you hadn't dealt with that trauma, right? Because you was too busy dealing with everything else. And it's very much like karma. It's going to come back around, right? Um, yeah, your trauma, it's going to come back around. It's going to come back to bite you if you don't address it. There's no way to heal it. I mean, you can put it into healing, right? So, healed is a very permanent, very permanent word.
I
Heal,
don't think we ever heal from it. I
yeah.
like to use a ladder, for instance. If you were to take your traumas that you've experienced and put each trauma on a line, we're going to call it a timeline, and the date that it happened, a very special gift probably opened up on the opposite end of that. And we're so busy focused on the trauma that we don't know what the gift of it was. And
Oh, right.
you have to turn it sideways and you look at it like a loop, and it's spinning, it's spinning. So we think we dealt with it, and then a year down the road, it resurfaces, but it doesn't impact us the way it used to. It's a little bit less. And the more frequently we visit it, all of a sudden it's still there, but it doesn't trigger us or cause a reaction. Now it's responsive. It's like, oh, okay, I see what's going on now. And we kind of just, it no longer disturbs us the way it did before because we're viewing it from an adult perspective versus a child's perspective.
You ever been in a, you ever been in like a random place, like a department store or a grocery store, just a random place having a random day, and something you see, smell, or hear or touch reminds you of something and triggers you in such a way, and you're
Right.
like, oh, I haven't felt that in a while, right? Oh. And then what the interesting part about that is it pops up, but once it pops up, it doesn't go away until you put it into healing. Not healed, put it into healing, right? So um it's I lost my train of thought. I lost it. It's gone. Um
We, I could tell you this, we have this most amazing experience coming here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in Arkansas, and I grew up in a little place called Eureka, Missouri.
Eureka,
Okay.
Eureka.
The most traumatizing time of my life I've ever had. Okay. And as we're moving, we're towing the RV, we're in our vehicle, and Alan and I love White Castle. Please don't judge us. We just do.
Judgment.
Uh, right. And
Uh-huh.
so Alan and I decided we want to stop and we want to have White Castle. Well, it had been 30 years since we'd been in that area going down. Was it I-7? What's I-44? I-44 as we're coming out of St. Louis and we're getting really close to where I grew up. And we're looking for the White Castle that we always went to. And we passed one, but it didn't look like the one that we used to go to. So we went a little further down because we seen a sign. And Alan pulls off. And when he does, my entire body, everything that you can possibly imagine. And I'm thinking, oh, I've dealt with this trauma really well. And he pulls off at the Eureka exit. My whole body has muscle memory, whole body. I
Mm.
am flipping out. I'm white knuckling it and telling him, you got to get out of here. You got to get out of here. And he continues to find a place to turn around. You don't just turn around with an RV.
Right.
So I'm not familiar. It doesn't look familiar. He gets down the road and there's the high school. And then I really freak out because that's where the person worked that a lot of this stuff had happened to me.
Mhm.
And Alan whips it around and he can't get on the highway fast enough. I never seen two people that said, screw White Castle, get us the hell out of here. Okay. And we went down the road. We had something different, but I had to get out of that energy because I hadn't introduced my new version to an old energy. And my body freaked. It freaked. It wasn't that my mind was freaking, my body did. It started shaking, didn't it, honey? Shaking and just, oh my God, get me out of here, get me out of here. It remembered the trauma. And it was after we got out of that, I went, oh, this was a healing moment for me to say,
Mhm.
it's still there. It only lasted a short time, but it was an intense energy,
Yeah.
very intense.
Mhm.
So even when we don't think of it with our minds,
Mhm.
our bodies have muscle memory.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that I'm grateful for it now. At the moment, I was like, just get me the hell out of here. I was like a cat in a cage,
Yeah.
just clawing grasping at anything. Just move, 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 get out of here.
Yeah. It's
Um,
how I feel when sometimes if I'm feeling nostalgic and we're cruising around where I grew up, when we turn on a certain cul-de-sac and the house that I was abused in um just still stands, looks exactly the same. I got that energy is there. It comes up and however, I've heard that they've completely remodeled the inside. My mom's been through it. She said the basement where he used to take me a lot was completely remodeled and redone, and they let her go through it. So I'm thinking maybe one day I'll go through the house and hopefully it'll be a healing moment for me to see it not the way that it was, and the way that it was is gone.
right.
Yeah, that place isn't there anymore. That happened to me when I had the explosion, the trauma from the explosion. Um, I had to deal with the trauma every day, going into and out of the house, moving things out that was salvageable. So every day I was brought right back into the ground zero, right? The where the trauma happened, and I had just gotten out of the hospital. So it was just the oddest way um that I had to go really and relive it every day until we could get everything out of there. And then once we were out and they started working on it, and to be able to walk through it and see it all drywalled back up and painted, and the kitchen's done, and the
No,
floors are down, and all the burnt is gone. All the damage I done is gone. Like it's gone. I got pictures of it, but it doesn't take me back to the
Right,
smell, to the place, right? It's the place is gone.
right,
And that's very healing for me. It still stands, but it's rebuilt. It's remodeled. It looks great. It was very healing for me to do that. A lot of times when we're abused in a lot of ways, you'll hear a lot of psychiatrists say that you need to go face your abuser. And I do not agree with that in any way, shape, or form. I just don't. I don't think you have to go to the person who molested you or to the person who hurt you in any way, shape, or form and have any type of any relationship with them at all, right?
right.
I mean, especially if they're a parent or a step parent or somebody who was supposed to watch over you and care for you, right? Um, there's so much trauma involved in being sexually abused for instance, right? Where it follows us into adulthood and it follows us into the bedroom and
Right.
it stays with us until you see it in a remodeled, right? Until you see it differently, rebuilt, right? Um it's it's interesting how you do that. Like, you know, Lee, for instance, sort of was rebuilt. He was just a real not great dude, right? And but that doesn't mean that there's not still trauma there,
Right.
even for me, right? With the kind of dude that he was when we met and all the trust issues that I was having, there's still trauma there, right? But when it comes up, when those icky feelings come up, right? And I usually just try to speak them out, right? This is what happens. Ooh, this is what I'm feeling, right? This is the kind of energy that I'm feeling right now. And it could be somebody who could be the dumbest thing that triggers it. Could be somebody
Right.
who resembles them from the backside or a smell, even, right? A certain smell, um, anything.
Or
And
an aggressive energy. I
yeah,
mean, it could be that they just look like they're a lovely person and they're just speaking to you, but when they get too close, their energy is almost attacking.
yeah.
That energy feels familiar and
Mhm.
it can trigger you. I think there's great growing potential in that moment because that's one of those moments where we're using the ladder, flipping it sideways. We're going to revisit it, and there's healing in revisiting it. I believe that we could go back to the town now that we went through, and it won't affect me in that dramatic of a way
Right,
ever again.
right.
Uh, because there was such a surge of emotion and muscle memory at the time that the first time that you visit it, it can almost feel like you're reliving it, but you're not reliving it in this long, stretched out time.
Hmm.
You're able to get away from it, still be in it, and go, oh, that's my inner child that's really afraid.
I have a question. Was it the same White Castle, just it had been remodeled and it looked different?
No, it was a
Different one?
completely different one. There was never a White Castle in Eureka.
Oh,
And so it was like, okay, but we really didn't know where it was. We just seen the White Castle sign and it was saying exit whatever it was. Well, that wasn't even an exit when I was
right.
living there. So brand new exit. And as soon as we got off, it wasn't that I recognized it, it was that I felt where we were.
Yeah, yeah.
And Alan had to go, what are you freaking out about? What are you freaking out about? What are you freaking out about?
We're in a very familiar territory we've got to get out of.
Right. And
Yeah.
he held so steady, I got to tell you. So that's what happens. If we're going to deal with certain traumas, we're not going to feel safe
Hmm.
and we're going to need somebody to hold steady for us
Yes.
so that the safety can now come in and you're like, oh, you're right there with me. I'm not in harm's way. No one's going to hurt me, but I do have a remembrance of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, why are people it's so funny. It's the day before the election, and I'm getting all kinds of text messages from everybody. Please vote yes on this. Please vote no on this. I voted a week ago. I'm done. Oh, geez.
If it
Um,
goes one way too far and it goes one way too
yeah,
far the other way, then it's out of balance. So we gotta stand steady and be directly in the middle and understand, observe the energy, but do not engage. Do not engage the energy.
right. Yeah, that's so important. That's so important. Um, because most of us, most of us will confuse the energy and the pain. It's two
Right,
completely different things. So, I know that um, if I'm in some situation that, it feels icky. It's weird. Lee and I we're driving a couple weekends ago, and we drove past the place where my dad lived when he passed. And that whole area, I don't know, just brings back not horrible memories, but just that energy. It's just
right,
that energy is there, right? That energy is in that area. My father's energy is in that area. Always when I pull through it, it just is there. And it's not that I don't want to go through it because I do, right? But I'll go through it, but I won't stop and engage with it.
right, right.
I
It's like,
won't, I don't want to be like too nostalgic and go in and drive by the exact street, right? All this. I just go with the flow of the energy and just move through to where I need to be,
right,
right? But I also feel it and acknowledge that it's there, but also realize that I've put all that into healing, so it feels more of a healing space, a peaceful space, instead of a your heart hitting the floor type of
right,
space or an icky space. It's not that. It's not an icky space at all anymore. Where it did used to be an icky space.
right.
Um, a lot of times revisiting places helps. I got to, we went when I was married, before, um, his grandparents lived like 3 streets behind us, and that was the place that everybody was at. Seemed like all the time. We were there every day. We were The whole family was just a very tight knit family, and literally all the brothers and sisters and their kids was there every day. And if we weren't going to stop by for like dinner or something, we would pop in every day for some reason to check on them. And it was an older house. And we were out having, like, I think it was an Easter Sunday or something, because everybody was there, and I can remember the kids having baskets. And some woman pulled up, and her husband was driving, and she got out of the car. And thank God I was sitting on the porch, because I was feeling her energy was very fearful. She had a lot of fear. Her aura was just very off. And I knew that she was there for us, not for anybody else. And nobody else knew that. Nobody else saw that until she walked up to the gate. And I come off the porch and went over and talked to her. And she said, she was in therapy, and he suggested that I come here. I lived here when I was a child. And I was like, okay. And she was like, do you think that they would mind if I went through the house? And I was like, I don't see why not, but I'll go find out, right? So I go in. She was like, yeah, I don't care. Take her through. So now I'm not going to call the house haunted because I don't necessarily believe in haunting, but there was a lot of energy there, a lot of energy. I loved it there. And there was never like any evil or badness, right? That I felt. except for in one area of the house in the basement. I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't go down there.
Right.
And so I took her upstairs and I was talking to her because it was an old place. And there was a time when some drawers flew out, right? And it was when my ex-husband was holding the video camera and he was filming somebody messing around on the beds, and he had him stop. Everybody was sitting there and like two of the drawers flew out. And then everybody freaked out and ran out, right?
Right.
So she had stopped and she was feeling the energy in that room and she was crying, right? And I just put my arm around her and held on to her where everybody else was downstairs freaking the hell out, right? And I just held on to her, right? And I let her feel it until she was done. She went through some other rooms. She didn't have a problem, and she loved what they was doing with the place. And although this was in the 80s or the early 90s, and so everything was like mauve and baby blue
Right.
and and so we get through the whole house, and she said, and I said, "Would you want to go downstairs?" And she said, "No, ma'am, I don't want to go downstairs." I was like, "Okay, you know." And I said, "I have a question about the downstairs." Right? And I said, "There's a specific room." She said, "Yeah, I've got to go."
Oh,
So she left. So I took myself down to the basement, right? Into this room that everybody freaks out going. Now, there's concrete on the walls, but there was different color concrete in like two or three places, right? Where it had been concreted over. And for years, they kept talking about we should go dig that up down there and see what it is. Oh, somebody just replaced something and had to get in the pipes. Or, I was like, oh, yeah, that's probably not it. She would not go in the basement. She wouldn't go. And when we got out by the car, I said, did you get the healing that you needed? And she said, I don't know. I don't know. And I said, okay. And I mean, the woman got in the car and left. It's you could really tell that something in a lot of couple things in that house, there was trauma in her, right? Something happened to her in that house, right? Um, like I watched it in her. She cried in certain spaces, she smiled in certain spaces, she had memories.
mhm.
And but the trauma that she went through, you could clearly see in her head. And then after that, um, I always hoped that she found more good memories there than she did over the trauma. And I always tried to throw energy to her that way so that she could, put that into healing. But I thought that was so interesting that she actually did come back and look at it, right? And I've done that in a couple places where, things have happened to me and I went back and it's almost very similar to, the crosses that people put on the sides of the roads where their loved one got in an accident, right? They get comfort in um honoring that person and that space where they lost their life, right? And I always wondered if, anything like that ever happened, would I like put up a cross and my insides would be like, no, you wouldn't want to relive that trauma over and over and over by going past the cross. Well, you're going to go past the cross anyway. Why not honor
Right.
instead of having that, oh, energy, this is the area, right? You stop sometimes, right? And you put another flower on it or another pinwheel or something, right? To put you in a healing space. So next time you drive by, you see the decorations and it's a healing space now instead of a icky space.
You
And
create something beautiful out of something that was not beautiful at all.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And with heaven, one traumatic event after the next traumatic event after the next traumatic event, really, in my life. I could, I really should sit down and write a book. I really should sit down and write a book. They'd probably make a movie out of it. But I'd be pissed off if they didn't find somebody really, really, really skinny. And and with no blue hair. Some they put some brunette in there or something. I was brunette at one point in time, but I'm not now.
I used to have black hair,
I
and
did
now,
too. We both did.
yeah, I have jet black hair. And I've noticed over the past few years that Alan and I's hair is almost the same color.
I did in this picture, remember?
Yeah, yeah.
Black.
And now I've got this gray, and Alan and I have these streaks in the exact same spaces.
I love
So
that.
I have more than he does.
Yeah,
So
I
his,
completely understand why.
his is silver and mine's white. Um, but it's like I remember kind of looking at some of that trauma and not wanting to face it up to a certain point. And then when I started on this spiritual journey, I thought, oh, we all know that we have the dis-ease within us forms
Yep.
from not letting certain things surface. They stay there and they rot
Yeah.
and they rot. And we have got to understand that revisiting that in the adult form rather than the child trauma causes this amazing growth that is so beautiful. And you go from feeling unsafe to feeling, I'm not really fully feeling safe, but I'm safer. And then the next time, I'm even more safe. And eventually you will feel safe.
Hmm.
And no more a child going, oh no, get me out of here.
Right, right. Yeah.
So it's not that it ever goes away. It just resurfaces and you observe it from the new and improved you.
Hmm. And you, and then 5 years from now, when it revisits, you look at it from the new and improved you, right?
Right,
And and then as it goes on, it's you're going to be looking at it through all kinds of different eyes, not the ones that you're seeing now, but all kinds of different eyes. As I was talking to you, we were talking about my dream, but you and I can remember when you said to me, Sherry, I think that that angel is you, because I was telling you that it wasn't normally when I dream of an angel, they're huge, like really big, like 7 feet
right.
tall type of being. And I said this was just like a normal sized angel, like a regular sized person. And then per my dreams were progressing, the angel kept getting bigger and bigger. And me and Sandra were talking about my dream, and she said, Sherry, I think the angel's you. And I thought about it differently, and I was like, oh, well, that makes sense, right?
Growth.
That makes sense. Growth. Yeah. Got it. Okay. And we're clearly going through this, what everybody's going through, hot mess syndrome. It's um I know it's a rock of growth. Right? It's a rock because it's heavy and it's hard. Yeah. And then it's growth. And then there's another rock and it's heavy and it's hard. And then there's growth. And it just keeps going. It keeps going, y'all. Here to tell you.
I think it's funny that you're talking about the rock and growth because remember, I used to talk about take a backpack and fill it with rocks and go for a walk with it on your back.
Hmm.
And when it becomes so heavy and unbearable that you can't walk anymore, you put the backpack down, you're going to search for the biggest rocks to get out of there. Okay. And you only have an option of throwing one at a time. So you're going to find the biggest rock and you're going to throw it. Well, that's the biggest event that's happened to you in your life.
Yeah.
And you let it go. And as you walk further on, eventually the backpack will be emptied and you feel you're not carrying the weight of the world on your back.
Yeah.
and the walk becomes easier.
Yeah.
And we all need to try that. If you really don't think that you're affected by trauma, put some rocks in a backpack and go for a walk.
Yeah.
And walk until you can't walk anymore, and then stop and take that biggest rock out and throw it. And when you do put the intention into the rock, I'm getting rid of this, it no longer serves me.
Right. Right. And then, but also don't expect when your backpack is empty that as you walk, you realize that you feel something rattling around there, and then you look and be like, oh, well, how did you get here? It's because I didn't have a rock. Right? We we often wonder how they manifest themselves.
Right? They grow, man.
Oh, where'd you come from? I'd put you up a long time ago, but let's look at it again. Let's look at you again. But
I
you're looking through different eyes, like you said earlier. You're looking through different eyes when you pick it back up. And and every time is more and more healing
right,
every time. So I'm super excited to go back through the house once everything's done and then really be able to smile. Now, every time I drive by it, I don't see that burnt house anymore. I know that
right,
it's reborn, right? I know that. I know that inside. You can't tell from the outside, but I know on the inside it's better.
right,
And
right,
and that, if we just look at all of our trauma that way, right? Um, every day that you're in a safer space than you were the day before
right.
is working towards putting your trauma and healing every day, right? Every day, as long as you're not standing in the middle watching the tornado go around you
Right.
of all the trauma, and you're standing in the middle, and it's kept you stagnant,
You
right?
know what is in the center of a tornado, right?
What?
Calmness.
Calmness, yeah, like the eye of a hurricane. Yeah.
Everything around you is spinning, 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 and it's spinning out of control, and you're observing the chaos, but you're standing in the calmness of it. But one step in one direction, and you're in the chaos. What do we have a fear of? That we're going to step out of this place of comfort,
Right.
step into that tornado, and it's going to whisk us away.
Right.
So it's really, really, it can be really scary to step out of our comfort zone, because if you're comfortable in the uncomfortableness that you have created, you need to get uncomfortable in that uncomfortableness so that you can move forward and understand I'm a new being.
Yeah.
I'm a new being. It's not going to look the same way as I thought it would
Yeah.
from my trauma eyes.
Right.
So it does get chaotic. You know that.
Sure.
That chaos can spin out of control, girl.
Ooh, preaching over here. Guys, we will wrap this up, and thank you so much for watching. Um, I'm Sherry from Lee and Sherry from Relationship Reinvented. I should stop saying Lee and Sherry, but it is what it is. I'm Sherry too. And it's relationship reinvent at gmail.com to contact me. Relationship reinvent at gmail.com. And before Sandra tells you how to contact her, um, I'll get with Sandra on the dates, but I'd like to run a beginner's chakra class. So if you are really wanting to learn about your chakra system, we are going to spend 1 week on each chakra. And it's going to be super fun, and we'll get with you on the date. So if you're interested in that, give us an email at, again, relationshipreinvent at gmail.com, or
I'm Sandra with Sandra and Alan, otherwise known as Salon, at Twin Flame Divine Fire at gmail.com. You can find us at twinflamedivinefire.com and look up everything that we do. And if you're interested, contact us.
There it is. Sandra and I also would love to help you with your healing and some healing sessions. So if you're interested in that, give us an email and we'll shoot you some information. So we will see you soon. I'm going to do this without cut. Last time I cut Sandra all the way off. I'm going to hit stop recording.